which score is currently 1-0 to Vortix, and we now have Vortix playing against Wham, with Vortix playing the Abbasid in the east of the map, playing as the Abbasid, sorry, in blue, and in the west of the map, we've got Wham playing as the English. Very interesting matchup here. Nicole, what do you think about this? English Abbasids one we've not seen yet.
That is indeed an intriguing matchup. I'm not sure what Vortex is thinking about with the Abbasids, because we have seen attempts at using the Abbasids for a 2000er boom in open maps like this one, for example. But that's not really something that works well against good early aggression civilizations, and English is one of the best early aggression civilizations in the entire game. Bam can just go for an early longbow push, and even if you can't deny that second town center, you can harass the lumberjacks of the opponent, because with the long range of your longbows, you can really cover a lot of space. So you can get one or two longbows out around the base of the opponent if your opponent is making no army, and just deny resources until you get your infantry siege upgrade, and then you come in for a ram push. So I kind of feel like the English is a very, very good civilization that could hard counter a 2000er boom here from the Abbasids. So I'm curious to see what Vortex has on his mind with the Abbasids. He's got a fairly exposed gold mine, which doesn't help him at all. His stone mine isn't spectacular either. Whereas if you compare it to Vam's base, Vam's got a very nice gold mine at the back, pretty safe and well defendable. So maps aren't really favoring Vortex here either.
So just to correct myself from before, this is actually game 3 that we're watching. So this is a deciding match between Vortex and Wham. The winner of this match is going to play Marine Lord for the opportunity to make it to the Final Four. So that maybe changes things up a bit. A very, very important match. Now, Wham is a player that is very popular, but has not made it yet to the deep position of an event, so, or at least of a major event. So really interesting to see a deep run from him. Always interesting to see a new player that is making his way through. So really, really good to see. Now, he's run into a formidable opponent in Vortex. For those of you not aware of Vortex, he is an absolute beast. He lost in the finals of the Steel Series Prime Cup, of course, but he also had a decent run in the Winner Stays On series at EGC and has been there or thereabouts, making the final 8 main event of Genesis. Very, very good player who certainly has a major event on the horizon in his target.
Absolutely. And the thing is that the fact that Vam already pushed this into 1-1 just tells you how good of a player he is as well. Because, as you said, Vortex is the guy that we've been talking about a lot because of his tournament performances. But don't underestimate Vam. He is ranked 17 on the leaderboard. And we have seen it in multiple times in Age of Empires 4 that, especially in these best of threes, upsets can be pulled by players that showed less in tournaments so far. I think this is the first time I'm seeing Vam actually play deeper into a tournament. Not sure if he even signed up for previous major tournaments, but so far he's 1-1 with Vortex, and he's just one game away from defeating him, and that would be something I would probably call an upset, because based on tournament performances, Vortex is the favorite of this set.
Yeah, definitely agree with this. So, certainly on skill, he's the favorite. Well, I say on skill, I mean, we don't know as much about Wham. What's very interesting, we have not seen very many Abbasid victories in this tournament, so it's going to be really, really interesting to see if he can pull one off. Council Hall now going down for the English for Wham. Going to start being able to get out those archers very, very quickly. It's going to be interesting to see if he could start making a little bit of an impact. A little bit of a mirror of the game we saw recently here, in that more boomy perhaps from the Abbasid. I mean, what would the Abbasid like to do in this situation to try to counter the English aggression?
I think you gotta go for a couple of horsemen at the beginning, just to make sure that those first couple of longbowmen can't do much against you. Because you see, if it's such an exposed gold mine, you need something that protects that gold from the longbows. That could be a tower as well, but obviously, in that case, the longbows can hit the wood line. So you're probably best off if you go for a stable and some horsemen. And while you're at it, you can think about adding an archer range as well, because ultimately the English will add some spearmen, but you can delay the English push a tiny bit just by adding horsemen, and that's exactly what Vortex is going to do. and it looks like he's just playing a 1000er build, in which case he probably wants to go horseman defense and try to nail an early castle age, because unit composition wise, his horseman archer defense will probably be inferior compared to a massive longbow plus spearman rush. Looks like we have a double stable opening here though. Now, this is pretty heavy on your economy, but obviously the fact that you have cheaper villagers once you research the fresh foodstuffs upgrade will mean that it's a little easier for you to afford those otherwise very food-heavy horsemen. But this all comes down to how many spearmen we're going to have for the English player, because you see, Vam is very aggressive over here with longbows already crawling up at the tower, but I think he isn't expecting double stables from his opponent. He may have spotted one, but I'm fairly certain he doesn't know it's double stables, otherwise he would be scrambling for barracks by now.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that analysis. Going to be very interested to see what happens. As we said before, you need those 9 or 10 archers to begin to exert pressure and start one-shotting villages. And Wham is getting really, really close to that number. And I feel as soon as he gets to that number, going to start dancing around Vortix space, trying to begin picking off villagers one by one. So that is definitely something in his horizon. Now building that barracks in a very advanced position, going to be looking to get some spearmen out to protect those longbowmen. I quite like this opening for Wham. I would rather be sitting in his position, having that early map control. I like how he's looking right now. What are you thinking, Lidakor?
I kind of like the forward barracks over here, especially because Vortix isn't using those horsemen to counterattack. This is a very, very important thing to point out here. When you make a forward barracks, you sacrifice your defense against cavalry back at home just to be able to reinforce the battlefield a little easier. That's a little risky when you're up against, let's say, knights from the French that can just go for a counterattack. But against horsemen, that's a little bit easier to fend off with just a couple of longbowmen in the aura of the town center. I feel like you're perfectly fine adding that barracks to the front. Still, you gotta be careful here for Vam, because Vortex is coming in with a couple of horsemen. On the other side, though, longbows denying the lumberjacks of Vortex, and that's exactly the danger that you're facing when you're up against the English.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I just like this early setup that Wham's got. It's a very controlled start, beginning already that transition to farms, which of course is always very, very effective for the English. Nice raid coming in here, but unlike knights, I think they take 4 or 5 shots to take out a villager, much slower. And that horseman survives with about 1 HP, but does manage to get away. In the meantime, he's still walking around the base there, Wham, looking to pick off a couple of Vortex's villagers. So still a pretty even position both players are in right now. I don't think those horsemen actually managed to take down any of the English villagers, so he'll be pretty relieved about that. But if he can get that huge group of horsemen on top of those archers, they're going to just shred right through it, if you can see that. Wham definitely needs to be getting far more spears out onto the field.
Absolutely. He needs a lot of spearmen over here. The horsemen already have the defense upgrade, so they have 2 ranged armor, making it even more difficult for the longbows to deal with them. And you see, Vortex is really using those horsemen well, and in general, he's using his mobility well. I think Vam needs 2 things. First, he needs a couple more spearmen, and second, he needs to be a little more aggressive with his army, because he needs to leverage the fact that that barracks is on the front. If he just has that barracks out here, but he's not really using it to attack, then ultimately he's just leaving himself exposed at the back, while never really leveraging that forward barracks. This being said, here comes the push from Vortex, but there is enough spearmen over here to fight this off, and the difference between the horsemen and the knights is that the horsemen take a lot more damage from longbows. So even when they're just escaping and disengaging from a battle, they will take a lot of damage. So it's a lot more difficult to get a good fight in with those horsemen, because obviously, as you said, their damage output is smaller, and then the moment you have to retreat, you're going to lose a ton of HP.
Definitely. I actually think that Bam is in a very strong position here. I think those horsemen are very, very strong against a small group of longbowmen. Once they're massed and they start one-shotting those horsemen, it's really, really difficult to... it becomes a very difficult counter. Together now with his spears, I mean, those horsemen quickly become redundant. I mean, he can use them for siege, he can use them for raiding pretty effectively, but in terms of a direct military confrontation, I think their utility is going to be quite limited from now on in.
I agree with that. I'm actually surprised that how little aggression Vam is putting up. He's got a big army out here, but he's not really using that. Notably, Vortex actually mined some stone down south over here. That should be enough for a second town center. This is a sneaky stone that he has gotten because his starting stone was quite exposed, as we discussed before. So this gives him a chance to go for a second town center. He has a ton of food in the bank, though. This is, as I said, one of the side effects of being Abbasids and having cheaper villagers. As here comes the first major raid from Vortex, really leveraging that mobility. I think it's 2 potentially free villagers going down over here.
That was a really nice. That was a really nice raid, and as I was saying a second ago, that's kind of the remaining utility that he has for those. That being said, underneath the English town center, every time he raids, he's going to lose 2 horsemen. But that was definitely a good trade. He managed to get a few villagers for them, so
Absolutely.
worthwhile trade, but very, very hard to raid in that way.
Absolutely. Still, Vortex is leveraging his mobility, and that's quite important to point out. Whereas for Vam, he's just not pushing with the English, and this is exactly how you want to avoid playing as the English, because you got a slow-moving army, you don't want to get torn apart by the mobility of the opponent. You always want to be the aggressor and force Vortex to defend, but we haven't seen a single sign of that, which is just a little too weird for me. I don't think this forward barracks is now worth it for Vorm. I think he would actually be better off making a second barracks back at home, adding a couple of spearmen just to hold off these horsemen, and then focusing all his efforts to attack, because you see, he's chasing our horsemen with archers, and that's never a sight you want to see, especially with the English.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think a big trick was missed, as you were saying earlier. Wham had a really nice window to exert significant pressure on Vortex with those archers getting around the base. A lot of those horsemen are on very low HP, though. Other one's going to go down there. I mean, they just, in theory, horsemen, as we said, are a counter to the archers, but in reality, they're just not. They just get shredded very, very quickly unless there's a significant outmass there. So we saw 2 or 3 of them getting picked off already, and we see there 2 or 3 of the remaining on very, very low HP. Wham looks to be in a good position here, but I would like to see him use this advantage to get in and around Vortex's space more, picking off villages. He's got the momentum to do it.
Absolutely. Like, you could tell just from that fight that Vortex's army is nowhere close to the strength of Vam's army. So Vam needs to leverage that. He needs to start pushing this. But I feel like he's just taking too much time to do this. I still don't see a blacksmith up until now for the siege upgrade. So he's still a solid 2 minutes away from actually pushing this. He's 1 minute away from the upgrade. He, in fact, is starting with the steel arrow instead of the Rams upgrade. I think he should go for a Rams here, because behind this one, Vortex is using that window to raid, and once again, I expect Vortex to come in with the raid. Vam's gonna have some idle time, and he's going to be forced to react. He finally has a couple of spearmen back at home over here, so that's gonna help. But I feel like this big massive army is just completely useless right now for Vam. Behind this one, Vortex is massing a big force of horsemen and archers, though, and once you have a decent amount of archers here, you can technically just try to pick off the spearmen, and potentially
He's gone
swing
round the
battle in
back of
favor.
those villages. Sorry, Lidakor, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. He's gone back through those villages, a really nice angle of approach, and down, I think, 5 or 6 villages there. You can see the bodies on the floor. That was a lot of villages went down. He chose a really nice angle there, coming in the town center, then up from behind. That was very effective, and as you called, the units of Wham are just stuck in total no man's land. They can't decide whether they want to go and exert pressure on the base or go back and defend his base, and they're just standing there. And there's one thing you do not want in Age of Empires 4, is to have your units inactive in the middle of the field like that. They are serving no purpose.
Absolutely. And the weird thing is that Vam's got his window to do things, but you see Siege Engineering is coming in. He's doing the right things, just not in the right order, I believe, because while Steel Arrow is definitely something that helps him against those horsemen, ultimately, his defense against the horsemen are the spearmen, so he didn't necessarily need the Steel Arrow upgrade as much as he needed the siege, so that he can actually start leveraging the fact that he's got an army here.
100%. I mean, he's used that, bought that Steel Arrow upgrade, and he's not used it yet. I don't think he's fired a single shot with his archer since he got the upgrade, or unless there was one small confrontation with it. So definitely the wrong way around to the resources. If he'd used that instead, get the siege engineering and the rams on early, and now he's gone for the confrontation. And he's choosing, oh, I don't know about this odd timing, out of position. The horseman are getting on top of the archers. Finally manages to get the spears on top of the horseman. And now it's a straight fight between the archers. Wham having the upgraded archers. Not sure if Vortex has got the archers upgraded yet. So, not a bad fight there for Wham, but really he had so many better moments to take that fight. Now he's going to come around the other side of the base, maybe pick off a couple of villagers, but no, Vortex is there. Really good foresight, got his units in the right position.
And the window is closing rapidly for Vam over here. Castle Age on the way for Vortex, and this longbow and spearman push is very scary in Feudal Age until you have no men-at-arms. But once you got men-at-arms in, they will be able to deal with this, and the Abbasids being able to build mangonels as far with their men-at-arms, mixing some lancers, they will have all the tools they need to fight this. And honestly, even just upgraded archers here for Vortex might be able to push this off in Castle Age. And you see Vam once again is retreating. I really feel like he's not leveraging the fact that he's got that big army. Now, giving some credit to him, he sees this gold mine over here, so maybe he's thinking that he's denying that gold mine continuously, so there's no way his opponent gets to Castle Age, but he doesn't have eyes on this gold mine, and what's more important is that he never discovered that his opponent managed to sneak out villagers. So, just by sitting on one gold mine, you can't blindly assume that your opponent has absolutely no gold income, because that's not true, and we have the siege upgrade in for him already, but still, no sign of aggression coming in Feudal Age. His window might have already closed, to be honest.
I mean, that is just a huge point you've made there, Lidakor. If he was able to somehow, another raid coming in here right now from Vortex, this one being repelled very nicely by Wham. If he had scouted that other gold mine, it would be huge if he could go and put some pressure on it. As it is, the totally exposed gold mine for Vortex, but he's mining from it in total tranquility. Still, up to this point in the game, if Wham could discover that, scout it, and put some pressure on it, it would be huge. But I tend to agree with you that window is probably not so much closing now as closed, with the Castle Age coming in any second. Economies are likely to be quite close at this time, but Vortex has done a really good job with those horsemen constantly putting pressure on, and there he clicks up to Castle Age. Just two spearmen there, not enough to defend against those horsemen, and they're going to force the villagers off the gold.
Many of those horsemen are heavily damaged, so you gotta be careful not to lose a ton of them, as there is the King's Palace coming in. Vortex will see that his opponent is going into Castle Age. The biggest problem, I think, for Vam right now is that behind this one, Vortex has a second town center for some time, so now we're talking about a 16 villagers difference. So, yes, of course, Vam still has his army going, he's gonna be on 2 town centers as well, but he's playing from a steady villager deficit from this point on, so unless he leverages this army very soon, I feel like he will just get outproduced in terms of units very soon, because his opponent has a far better economy now.
And very interesting. I mean, as you see it every time, just the power of the English base there. That all of those horsemen actually went down. I don't think Vortex cares now that he's in Castle Age. Those horsemen have a lot less use at this point. They got absolutely shredded by the English town centre. That being said, Vortex now with the mangonel out in a really, really good-looking position. We saw it happen a number of times in this game, Lidakor, that Wham invested in upgrades that he didn't use. First, he used the steel arrow that he waited a long time to get good utilization out of, and then the siege engineering that he's still not used. So that's a lot of resource being used for no benefit.
Absolutely. I just feel like Vam never really felt confident pushing this one, which raised the question, why even invest into that much army if you're not pushing this? And especially in this Civilization matchup, you gotta be aggressive, because you have to know that the Abbasids will try to play 2 town centers. All I can think about is that he felt confident denying these mines over here, thinking that Vortex is on 1 town center, but he never discovered this mining operation over here, so he pretty much didn't know that Vortex gathered enough stone for a second town center. He didn't know that his opponent gathered enough resources for Castle Age. And I really feel like he's just not feeling confident enough to push in with the army he has. And now I no longer think that he has got the army advantage. So he might not even be able to push any.
That being said, we're still looking at very, very close game. Players in Castle Age. The income per minute is ahead on every resource for Vortex, but only slightly. Scores are in a virtual tie, so Vortix has the edge, and Wham can certainly still get back into this game. I just think that if Wham loses this game, he'll see this as a game lost, you know, more than one that Vortix won, in that he had the opportunities there to go and win the game. I think there was a point that if he pushed, picking off villagers, one battering ram, it was going to be almost impossible for Vortix to get back into it. Now it's going to be very, very tough, but I wouldn't call Wham out of this. I'd say it's maybe 70% favoring Vortix at this point. That being said, those mangonels are very, very scary.
And the Abbasids have the option to produce siege on the battlefield, so they can overrun the opponent with siege numbers. We have seen that back in the days of the Springald meta, and now, with the Springolds just serving the purpose of sniping the opponent's mangonels, that's once again going to benefit the Abbasids, because you see, it's much easier for Vortix to clean up all those Springolds and then just use the mangonels to great effect. Already getting some nice hits on top of that army from Vam. Vam having a very battered army over here as Vortix continues to push.
And Lidakor, I mean, battered army is one word for it. I mean, those archers are sharing about 5 hit points between all of them. He is now set up. Now he is trying to quickly regenerate the health on those, but they're basically on 0 hit points. This is a big push into it. He needs to get these Springles out the way. All those farms going down very, very quickly. They have very few hit points, of course, the farms. So getting to the ground in seconds. Mangonel's making light work of them. He badly needs hit points back on those, but unless he's able to deal with Vortex's siege, there's not going to be a way back into this game, and Vortex has just sat back, and timed it very, very well.
Absolutely. It's already a 17 villagers lead, and now with the push coming in, I feel like that villager lead is going to just widen out even more. The only thing that Vortex could really have here to help him would be 1 or 2 rams to knock down buildings, because he doesn't have anything against buildings that's really effective. But still, he's already going for that town center. He managed to disrupt the food economy of Vam, and at this pace, he's about to burn that town center down before Vam actually engages this army.
Wham maybe will have one more go at trying to repel this attack. Mangonels are too strong. I don't see a way that he's going to try and do that. I thought I heard a Wallalo there, but I can't see one, so... Landmark goes down. He does have a couple of Springles out now, but unless he just manages to micro these to perfection, just not going to matter, because Vortex has got so many Springles there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Springles on the field. So he takes one down. It was actually a very nice micro there. He did manage to take them down without losing one, but probably won't matter. He's going to try and get a few shots off and take down another one with longbows.
Mangonel is not really setting up here for Vortex. That's a little sloppy from him, but at the position he's in, he doesn't need to be perfect at this point, because he's pushing up with the ram. Springles will focus down the ram, so it's going to be a short-lived battering ram. Vortex threw away one battering ram over there, but still, at this point, he's the one disrupting the opponent's economy. So behind this one, Vortex is a completely untouched 2,000er boom, although his lumberjacking has seen better days, that's for sure.
The old long distance lumber cutting there, going for very long walks, but this is just going to be relentless from Vortex at this point, pushing in repeatedly. So again, a few more Springolds out here now, but probably not enough. Oh, and that Springold going down is very, very painful. 2 Springolds going down right there, and without any Springolds to defend, I don't see a possible way for Wham to now defend this.
Quite a lot of knights are ready to jump on those mangonels, and the knights actually perform quite well against the archers, but there's a couple of crossbows hidden in that group, so there will be enough beef here for Vortex to clean up those knights. And you see, Bam actually taps out before losing the majority of those longbows. He really didn't feel confident in this entire game, I'm not gonna lie. Every single fight, it really felt like he just wasn't confident to fight at all.
Definitely agree, Lidakor. I mean, I wonder if that was a little bit of nerves there, because looking at how deep Wham got in this tournament and some of the players that he beat along the way, I wonder if sometimes that happens. Maybe he respected his opponent a little too much. He was against Vortex deep in the tournament, just needed to push and hung around a little bit too much, but a really good effort a pretty deep run from Wham there. Probably good enough to put himself on the verge of guaranteeing entry to the 20k winter